Okay, so let's focus on this pretty intensely. Okay. All right. So let's say that we're in the current combat rules before the release of Foundations. The current combat rules are as follows. Let's say my Tolarian Terror, I'm the attacker. My Tolarian Terror attacks. And let's say that my opponent blocks with... Do I have any 2/2s? 2/2s. Okay, anyway. Let's say my opponent blocks with these cards. They double block, and let's make this in focus. Give me a second. Okay, that's gonna have to be the best I can do. Sorry about the glare. But my opponent is blocking with a 2/2/3s. Ignore all the rest of their little abilities. 2/2/3s against a 5/5. Now, the current blocking system and like combats, the way combat works is the first thing that we do post declare blockers, right? The opponent goes, I'm blocking this with both of these, a 2/3 and a 2/3. It's not going to kill the Tolarian Terror on the face of it, but it will eat up all the damage if they're worried about damage, right? For more realistic sake, let's just say this is a 3/3 and a 2/3. Okay? Actually, let's do that. Okay. So we've got a 3/3 and a 2/3, and they're blocking the Tolarian Terror. In the normal way of combat, right, what's going to happen is this is going to die, and one of these is going to die. Right? And so the declare blockers, you declare 2 blockers on this. The next thing that happens is I declare the blocking order. I declare that I want to kill one of these, assign damage to one of these first. So let's say that I care more about this 3/3 than this 2/3. I would assign damage first to this, then to this. That is the order of the blockers that I choose. Once I have prioritized the order of the blockers, both of us get a chance to play combat spells, tricks, instant speed stuff to do. I get priority first as the attacker. If I'm fine with trading a 5/5 for a 3/3, I can just let this go. Right? I would do 3 damage to this first. I have to assign deadly damage to this, lethal damage to this, before I can assign damage to that. Okay? So I only have 5 damage total to deal. So 3 damage goes to this, and 2 damage goes to that. This will die, and this will not, and this will die. As it stands. If nobody plays anything. Now, if under current combat rules, right? If I have something I want to do, let's say I play a braid targeting this 3/3, right? If nothing else happens, this will die, and this will still be in combat blocking this. This will assign 5 damage to this, this will die, and this will live. Okay? But let's say I try and go for the Abrade on the 3/3, and they play Snakeskin Veil, targeting this. They put a +1/+1 counter on it. It's 4. So this, right, is dealing 4 to this and 1 to this. And it's still dying. So it's still trading for this creature, but it's also trading for this spell. Right? So the math is 2 for 2, right? This stays alive. So there's a lot of things that can happen during combat to change how this goes, but the one thing that isn't changing is that I still have to do lethal damage to this before I can touch that card. Okay? Because I've ordered it first. Now, the change. Okay. The change now is the following. I attack with the Tolarian Terror. They declare both of these as blockers. I do not order the blockers. There is no point at which I say this first, this second, or this first, this second. I do not order the blockers anymore. The step where I get to play combat tricks and they get to play combat tricks still happens. So I can still do an Abrade on this. They can still do a Snakeskin Veil on this. You still get to play those tricks. But once all of those tricks are resolved, I, as the attacker, get to choose how I want to deal the damage. Okay? So, if I go for the Abrade on this, and they go for the Snakeskin Veil, they have a 4/4 and a 2/3 against my 5/5. Right? I only have 5 damage to deal, but I can deal it however I wish. So let's look at what that looks like here. Right now, right, the Abrade is doing 3 damage, is trying to do 3 damage to this. It doesn't work, right? Instead, we actually put a +1/+1 counter on the Knight, right? The Abrade fizzles because it no longer has a legal target because this has hexproof. So these two have resolved, and I now have this facing me. Now I get to choose how I want to assign the damage. Do I want to kill the 4/4 and do 1 to this, or do I want to do 3 to this and 2 to this? Or do I want to deal 3 to this and 2 to this? And here's where that matters. Here's where that's really important to remember. I no longer have to deal lethal damage to this because I ordered it first, or lethal damage to this because I ordered it first. I can deal 3 damage to this and 2 damage to this and let this creature die. And then post-combat, I can play Seeker's Folly. Creatures my opponents control get -1/-1 until end of turn. Both of them will die. Because this has 3 damage on it and has 4 toughness effectively. This one has 2 damage on it and has 3 damage effectively. So this is extremely important. It makes cards like this so much more powerful because I can distribute the damage amongst the blockers however I wish. I do not have to assign lethal damage to anything if I don't want to. I don't have to order the blockers, and therefore I do not have to assign lethal damage to either of them in order to do damage to the other. This is also interesting. Never blocking again. Yeah. So what this does is it means combat tricks. So let me illustrate this again, right? Let's say Tolarian Terra attacks, right, into these two. Let's say, and I don't have the card, I'm sorry yet, but let's say that I play a Giant Growth, which gives 1 thing plus, sorry, the blocker plays Giant Growth, which gives 1 thing +3/+3 until end of turn. Let's say they target this creature here. Okay? That means that this is a 5/6, and this is a 3/3. Under previous combat rules, if I had assigned this first, right, this would be a blowout, right? If the attacker had assigned this first and they Giant Growthed it, this would have to try to do lethal damage to this first, right? And could not assign any damage to this. So both of these creatures would live and this would die. Under the current combat rules, I can assign damage how I choose. So Giant Growthing this does not mean that I can't kill this. Do you see? I can now choose how to assign the damage, and I choose to kill the 3/3, because at least I can kill that. I cannot kill this. This is a 5/6. I only have 5 damage on my Tolarian Terror here that it can deal. So that's the new combat rule. It is very important to remember that this is the case. It's going to take a lot of adjusting for me. And what that does is it nerfs combat tricks, because whereas a giant growth in the old system where this was ordered first, this was ordered second, could save both of them and completely blow out the attack, right? Now that can't happen. Now I am still going to lose one creature no matter if I give this giant growth until the end of the turn or not. So combat tricks to some degree are nerfed. You're welcome, Ice Prophet. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad that it's helping. The other thing I want you to see, I really, really want you to see that First Strike is still very, very powerful. So this Sure Strike that we have, target creature gets +3/+0 and gains First Strike until end of turn. That's still really powerful because First Strike has always worked in a different way. What First Strike does, as you all know, who have been playing for a long time, but as you may not know if you're fairly new, is First Strike adds retroactively an additional combat phase, the First Strike phase, such that a creature with First Strike will deal its damage prior to any of the other creatures. So First Strike will still work as it always has worked. If you First Strike this, it's going to kill this. And during First Strike damage, this is never going to get to do its damage. Unless I pump it somehow, right? Yeah, very impactful, yes. Constructed as well, very impactful. 15 years of, yes. This has been around since 20, so you've ordered blockers since Magic 2010. You've ordered blockers for that long, and prior to that, damage went on the stack, which was totally different anyway. So this is a long-standing way Magic has been played, and I, who really love combat tricks and working out the best way to get advantage from them, it's gonna really change my playstyle a little bit, because again, most combat tricks without that First Strike are gonna be nerfed. Especially this fake your own death. If I fake my own death on this Inspiring Paladin, gets +2/+0, when it dies, blah, they can choose not to kill this so that I don't get any ETBs back, right? They can choose just to kill that. So this is really, really important to understand that it's very different in combat now. And I think they may not have printed cards that take that into account yet. The idea of this card, like with single blocks, this card is still powerful, obviously, right? Because you're not like changing. It's only with multi-blocks, sorry. Like more than one creature blocking. It can be all the way like to like 1,000,000 if you have like a ton of tokens, right? The only way this matters here, but like this really does nerf combat tricks for multiple blocks. Like if multiple blocking was already a bit of a problem with being potentially blown out by, an Abrade. If you didn't have a response, Abrade would eat this, it would kill this, and then you just eat that for free, right? Or vice versa, right? You were already double blocking was a risk, but it's an even more of a risk now because the attacker still gets to choose how to assign damage. The only way it's a little bit less of a risk is that First Strike, okay? But even if you do the First Strike, they can still abrade it in response, right? If they're happy with this trade. So there's a lot of really crazy things going on with this change in combat. So the next thing I want to talk about is how much this strengthens this. So anytime, right, you have a replacement effect to damage that deals +2, like we had with like Torbrand, I think it was, or like anytime a red source would deal damage, you get +2, or in this case, right, replacement effects that like deal double that damage instead. Okay, so let's talk about that. I need another big creature. Let me see if I can go find one. Okay, let's try... let's try the 4. Okay, let's try the 4/4 Alenda, okay? And let's pretend that we have Twin Flame Tyrant on the board. Twin Flame Tyrant reads, if a source you control will deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals double that damage instead. So let's say Alenda then attacked into Inspiring Paladin and Erudite Wizard. Okay? Under the previous rules, I would order the blockers. Let's say I would order Inspiring Paladin first and Erudite Wizard second. Okay? Alenda has to assign lethal damage to this before she can deal damage to this. Okay? Lethal damage to this is 3. Right? Lethal damage to this is 3. So if Alenda deals 3 to this, and then her remaining 1 to this, and that's doubled, this will take 6, and this will take 2. So Alenda will die, right? Only having killed this under current rules. This will not die because it has 3 toughness. And it's only taking 2. Because 1 doubled is 2. This is taking 6 damage. Which it's very dead. Right? But Alenda does not have trample, so none of that is going to carry over to this. Right? So. And even then, even with trample, it would be still 3 and then 1, right? For 4. But yeah, anyway, you get the idea. So, okay. So, under the current rules, that's completely different. You're not ordering the blockers. You do not have to assign lethal to one and then to be able to assign damage to the next. So Alenda can assign 2 here and 2 here. When that's doubled, it's 4 damage to each. And in this way, doubling effects or plus X effects, because you can distribute the damage how you want, are far more powerful. Does that make sense? Am I explaining it in any clear way? I hope I am. I'm trying so hard because I really want you all to understand how this is going to work in Limited. Is this going to be on the exam? No, there's no test. You can always, and that's actually really important for anybody who's still confused. And I understand there's a lot going on here with this shift, right? And there was a lot going on in combat, period. Like, if you're new to the game, this sounds like a ton of like things to remember. Call a judge. Judges are there for you. These people are amazing. They are kind. They are there to make sure that your magic experience is good, is educational, is fun. So they are there to make sure that they can help you understand how this is going to work. So it's just really, really cool. So to have judges, and honestly, they should be paid but aren't. Sorry about that. I know I'm supposed to be a Wizards ambassador here, but I do think Wizards should pay its judges. It does give them some things, I know that, but like but I really feel like they deserve to be honored. Anyway, call a judge. If you're confused about something, call a judge. So they'll explain how it works to you. So, and you can call a judge prior to making a move, and you can step away from the table and say, okay, I'm planning on doing this. How is this going to work? Okay. So you can totally get this. That's going to be fine. Do not worry. Have fun with this. If you make a mistake, don't worry. Just play Magic and just enjoy. Okay. But that is how the new combat works. It is really important to understand that that's the new rules, and it will be in effect in theory in your pre-release. So, and certainly when Foundations is coming out. So, make sure that you understand what's going on there. And yeah, so this, I believe they're using this for pre-release. I believe that is the case. That's what I was told, but I don't know for sure whether certain game stores have another policy or not. But what I do know is that certain of these combat tricks were not printed with this new rule in mind. This gets so much worse when that is the case. I mean, it's +2/+0, but they can choose just to deal all the damage to the other creature if this would give you any advantage on the board. So it's a little rough. But again, cards like this now get quite valuable, right? Especially if you think your opponent's, first off, it's already valuable in that it's a mind rot, but it has the versatility of also being -1/-1 until end of turn. And there are a lot of creatures with 1 toughness in this in limited on the common and uncommon slots. Additionally, right, because of this gets so much more valuable for potentially wiping your opponent's board rather. So yeah. So I did want to illustrate that. So it's just, this is the new combat rule. Hopefully that helps you understand how the combat tricks have been slightly weakened overall, except for the first strike, which acts as it always has, and the doublers or replacement effects of like doing X+1 or X+2 or triple or so on have been how do I say, embiggened, bettered, improved, made more powerful. So yes. Oh, thank you so much for the biddies. Really appreciate it, Ice Prophet. Thank you so much. It should be active on the pre-release, but it's officially a new rule on 5/11/24. Oh, interesting. Or sorry, 15/11. So November 15th. So it's not an official rule at the pre-release? Interesting. Are we sure? Oh, that's going to be really important. Okay. Okay, what I need you to do then is I really need you to ask at your store, at your local game store. I need you to ask whether this rule is in effect. I need you to ask, because I have had mixed messages in terms of whether it will be active or not active. So ask at your local game store, ask the judge first, is this rule in effect? And let me know how many people said yes and how many people said no. But that is the new rule. Hopefully that is helpful as an overview for what it's going to be like. If not at the pre-release, then at the actual release of the set.